Welcome to Podcast 83, a regular look at the news, stories, and trends related to Michigan's 83 counties from the Michigan Association of Counties.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Podcast 83, podcast put on by the Michigan Association of Counties. My name is Stephan Currie, the Executive Director of MAC. Today we are joined by Deena Bosworth and Jimmy Johnson, both members of our MAC Government Affairs team. Good morning, guys. How we doing?
Good.
A great morning. Great
Finally
morning.
getting some warmer temperatures. It looks like the coldness of winter is in our rearview mirror finally. Like, I feel like I can say that. I feel like it's done. No?
It's going to be 33 degrees tonight. There's a frost warning.
I'm sleeping when that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I do have a soccer game that starts at 7, so maybe I'll have to dress appropriately for that.
Bundle up.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, let's get into it. So let's talk a little bit about some legislation that some new legislation that was introduced last week that deals with legislation we dealt with a few years ago. That was a hot topic that has to do with zoning and siting of renewable energy facilities and who does that, who can do that. So Deena, why don't you give us an update on energy siting and what's been introduced?
Yeah, absolutely. So there were a couple of bills, 4028, 4027, introduced by Representative Greg Alexander from Sanilac County, that would repeal those sections that were enacted a couple of years ago that deal with the siting of large-scale wind and solar facilities. Everybody probably remembers, if you're part of this, you have to have a compatible renewable energy ordinance, or the solar developers can just skip right over you and go to the Michigan Public Service Commission to cite, their large scale projects. So these two bills were introduced, took up in committee for testimony, and voted out of committee last week. And they would just repeal all of those sections. Now, I anticipate a vote in the House. I think they're going to stall out in the Senate, though. We still have members over there who are adamant that solar and wind build out is extremely necessary at this point in time. So different philosophies between the House and the Senate, but for us, it was good news. Give back some more local control.
Yeah, fairly simple legislation that kind of just repeal that section but like you said, maybe hit some headwinds in the Senate, but it is a slim majority in the Senate, so you never know what can happen. It's nice to get bills out there, and then you kind of deal with them when you can, and you never know when that opportunity may present itself, right?
Well, what I think is what we saw last year at the end of session. You never know what they're going to do in lame duck. And there's all kinds of deal making and bartering that happens, especially during that last 3 weeks of December at the end of a legislative session, where people want to get certain things done or don't. Usually depends on what the election results are that previous November, but as I think by moving these bills out of the chamber and putting them in the Senate's lap, that leaves the door open for negotiations for some of the things the Senate might want.
And did you give the bill numbers on those?
4027, 4028.
And who's the bill sponsor?
Representative Greg Alexander from Sanilac County.
Okay, great. I'm actually heading over to Sanilac in a couple weeks, so that'll be
Good.
all right. Let's move on. Public Safety Violent Prevention Fund, something we've talked about a few times now on the podcast and in some of our legislative updates, was passed out of the House, now sits in the Senate, but there were some changes. Tell us about what those changes were.
Yeah, can I just recap, because I'm so
Sure.
happy that counties are included in that. So it's been, several years now. This started out as an endeavor from Mayor Mike Duggan. He wanted more money for public safety and violence prevention efforts in Detroit, and came up with an idea of carving out a certain percentage of the sales tax to go to this public safety and violence prevention fund. Well, as those bills moved through the process last legislative cycle, counties were not included. We were not eligible entities, even though our county sheriff's department and our courts and our treatment programs really do help contribute to violence prevention and public safety. So we kind of fought those bills as they moved through the process last year. The governor had a substitute bill drafted up in lame duck that never actually got to her desk, and then still didn't include counties in it. Her budget presentation, they stated that they wanted to set another $75 million for public safety, but counties still were not eligible entities. Now, great news, Representative Harris and Representative Farhat have House Bills 4260 and 4261, and they carve out 150, the new substitute bills that passed out of the House is $115 million for public safety and violence prevention. But it's broken out a little bit differently. So they've got 2% of the first $75 million going to the Crime Victims' Rights Fund. They've got 2% going to the Department of Health and Human Services for community-based violence prevention efforts. Then $72 million for cities, villages, and townships based on their crime rate. And a whopping $40 million just for county sheriff's departments. So they can apply to get these funds and they can utilize them for pretty much any kind of program they want, whether it be more sheriff deputies, programs that they run out of the jail, anything that really is going to kind of combat public safety or violence and increase public safety. A couple restrictions. Number one, we can't supplant the money that we spend on the county sheriff's department. So they're not going to get it if the county's going to say, well, you get a grant for 10 million. We're going to take 10 million back. It's not going to work that way. But it'll just enhance their efforts. So pretty excited about that. Passed overwhelmingly in the House. Now it's over in the Senate. And we do know it's been a Senate priority, a governor priority, and a House priority. So I anticipate these bills to get done probably before the end of summer.
Yeah, some good legislation there that we've worked on for a while. Got it to, nice increase in there compared to where it started from and where it ended up last year. Kind of the flip side, this is my pessimism coming out, why we have all this support out there. You never know what happens in the legislature, right? We talk about it. It could be a positive, we get bills introduced and they work on things. You would think this would go through fairly quickly, but it is the legislature and we're not sure always what happens. So hopefully they do push it through. And by the end of the summer, I think with everyone who's out there and supporting it, that should be easily done by then. But again, you got a budget going on, you got roads going on, you got a lot of moving parts in there. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Steve, because we're concerned about the state budget office we know is resistant to any kind of carve outs out of any general fund revenue that they receive. And so this would be a carve out, again, $115 million out of the state sales tax. So we'll see. I mean, depends if they, the governor can talk the state budget office into relaxing a little bit about it and letting that money go to public safety.
And it's a great trend to set with some of the other stuff we're working on, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
All right, Jimmy, let's talk a little bit about something that counties don't always deal with specifically. I think there might still be some county-owned hospitals out there, but something you've been working on with our Medical Care Facilities Council, the Nurse Licensure Compact. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been working on there?
Yes, so there's legislation that's been introduced by Representative Phil Green out of Tuscola County. This has been a kind of pet project for him as his wife is a nurse. So what this legislation would do, it's House Bill 4246, it would have Michigan join into the National Nurse Licensure Compact. So there are currently 40 states that are involved in this, and essentially how it works is that if you have a nurse license, you are able to practice across state lines with a participating state in the licensure compact. So in particular, this is going to be really big in the border, our southern border counties, as well as in the UP, where there is a county medical facility, for instance, in Iron Mountain, and it's only about 20 minutes across the border into Wisconsin. So this is something that the Michigan County Medical Care Facilities Council is really advocating for. So we're excited to see this moving. It had a committee hearing last week in the House Health Policy Committee, and there was a lot of testimony. So they are going to be bringing it back up tomorrow for further testimony. We're still trying to find out if there's going to be a vote on it. But, we'll see where this goes. Now, this has been an ongoing conversation for the last 3 or 4 legislative sessions. In 2020, this actually passed out. and then was ultimately vetoed by the governor at the end of the session. So this is something that a lot of the members are well aware of. This is still an ongoing conversation. So we're going to see if they're going to be able to get this across the finish line and ultimately get the governor to sign off on it.
Yeah, great. So what's been the opposition in the past? Can you speak to that at all? Do you know, since it's
Yeah, and a lot of that is coming down to the different training requirements that Michigan has. For instance, the Michigan Nurses Association had brought up there was implicit bias training that they have. Additionally, they do a different kind of trauma training. And so in certain states, they don't provide that. So some of the concerns stem from that, as well as some continuing education requirements. The people that I would say would argue back to that is certain hospitals would have their own administrative rules in place when it comes to continuing education. So I would say those are kind of, the main issues, just different requirements for licensure between the different states.
all right, great, interesting. Thanks for the update on that. We'll keep our eye on that. And finally, as we wrap up County Government Month here this week, can you give us an update on what you've been working on with county government, National County Government Month?
Yeah, absolutely. Representative Frisbee, he is out of Calhoun County. He was kind enough to introduce this as House Resolution 62, which is National County Government Month. So we were glad to see that passed pretty easily through the House. So I'm just glad to see county governments get that recognition.
Yeah, I would hope so. Geez, that'd be kind of bad. if it didn't. But thanks for getting Rep Frisbee, former Calhoun County Commissioner, as you mentioned, strong supporter of MAC. We appreciate his efforts there, and we've had a lot of former county commissioners do that effort for us in the past. So it's nice to get a new legislator that still remembers his roots there. So, Deena, Jimmy, anything else you wanted to touch on before we sign off?
I think that's it today.
Yep.
All right. Well, great. Thanks everyone for joining. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Podcast 83.